One of the hardest parts every time my boyfriend leaves is coming back to an empty house. It just feels so different without him here. And one part of me really wants to cling on to the feeling of what it was like when he was here. Just that part of me that's really missing that moment in time when we were together. And then a different part of me also recognizes that I need to have my energy all with me in the present moment in order for me to use my energy to the best of my ability to live in the right now so that I can continue to make the steps to eventually build a future together. But I can't do that if I'm super fragmented trying to cling on to what it was like when he was here. So I see myself just having these two very different conflicting emotions. And so I'm just trying to learn how to really honor both of them at the same time. It's kind of sad and it's a little bit gross, but last night I refused to wash the sheets. So I wanted to sleep in our sheets one last time. That's really sad. I just needed a little more time before I started getting everything together and resetting the energy of the space to be more appropriate for what it is right now. So as you can probably tell, I am in a long distance relationship, and I have been in my long distance relationship for the past 4.5 years. And it all started when I studied abroad in England and I met my now boyfriend, Callum, and like idiots, we fell in love. And when I moved back to America, we decided to stay together, and we've been together ever since. And so these past years have been really intense and really challenging, but also extremely beautiful and super rewarding. And so I want to share both sides of that. So one thing that I've come to realize beyond the typical struggles of a long distance relationship for me personally is how much this relationship can trigger my abandonment wound. I am a child of divorce, and so essentially I had a long distance upbringing as well, which is kind of weird, a weird way to phrase it, but it's what it was. When I was 3 years old, my parents divorced, and so I lived with my mom, and then my dad moved to a different state. My absolute dream was for both of my parents to be together and for my family of 4 to be that way forever. And it was really hard for me because that wasn't my reality. My dad would still visit for birthdays or holidays, and sometimes I would spend summers with him. And any time that my family was a complete unit, they were the happiest moments of my childhood. Every single time when I was a kid and my dad would visit, I would stay up with him the night before he left to the airport. And I would be in his room and I would cry and beg him not to leave. And then I would do that until I couldn't stay awake any longer. And this happened until I was essentially a teenager. Like every time he left, it would destroy me. A lot of things used to overwhelm me from these experiences. There was, obviously that part of me that was sad because I was missing my dad. Another part that was just really longing to have that sense of proximity with him at all times. Just this general sadness of having to say goodbye. Anxiety. I remember I would feel really anxious about my dad flying away on airplanes and me not knowing if he would be safe or if he would be safe when I wasn't around him. This deep sense of scarcity, I guess, because at the end, whenever we would near the end of our trips together, I would always feel like, oh my God, time's running out, and then I'm going to have to say bye to him. And so every moment that we were together, it felt like it never really was enough. And it was laced with sadness. Even my happy moments were sad because I was scared of when they were going to end. So that made me feel like my capacity, to be with the people that I loved was limited. And then this overall just sense of helplessness, like this is the way things are and this is how they're going to be forever. That's how I felt as a child. So I formed an abandonment wound because of this situation and the repetition of this situation. And it formed in its own unique way too, because I always felt very chosen and very loved by my family. And regardless of that, my circumstances still left me feeling abandoned. I mention this because I think it's really important for us to validate our feelings regardless of what other people's perspectives may be for shared experiences. Like, for example, I highly doubt that my family ever felt like they abandoned me because they really did try their best given their circumstances. They gave it their all. And me feeling abandoned doesn't take away from their efforts and the love that they poured into me, So I guess I'm just bringing this all up because I want to say how important it is to validate our experiences and to honor how we feel. And a big step in my healing process has just been to learn how to honor and validate myself for my feelings and for my own unique perspective while still, completely respecting and honoring everyone else's perspective too. I guess what I'm trying to say in the most twisted of ways is your feelings are valid. That's it. I've spent quite a bit of time exploring my abandonment wounds, and through this exploration, I've come to realize that I've only begun to what feels like scratch the surface of my abandonment wounds. And through working with different practitioners, we have uncovered and discovered even these wounds that I've been carrying since my childhood. So, for example, when I was a baby and I left the Philippines to move to America, I didn't realize that I had so much sadness in my body that I wasn't able to fully process as a baby for leaving my family there. The people that I spent my whole life with, I was only 2 years old, but still you can form attachments with people. And I was just like, bye, see you later. I've even discovered, a lot of pain from saying goodbye to old babysitters. For some reason, all the babysitters that I liked and had attachments to in my life, they disappeared. They ghosted my family really quickly. And so I never really got a chance to say goodbye to them. And so I never realized for a long time that I was holding a lot of pain from that too, that sense of abandonment. And one time I was in the Akashic Records. Okay, get this. One time I was in the Akashic Records and I was trying to explore why my abandonment wound feels so rooted and so deep. Like it feels like it affects me so deeply. And so I was in the records and I was shown this visual of me in a village. And everyone in the village and everything in the village was burning. It was burning down. And I could tell that my family was burning alongside everything else. So it was a really, painful experience to witness all of it. And I looked down at myself and I was perfectly intact. But because I saw everyone and everything that I loved around me dying, I decided to throw myself in the fire because I didn't want to live a life where everything that I loved had left me. I didn't want to be abandoned. And so I chose to throw myself in a fire to avoid that. And so, that was a really powerful visual and kind of understanding for me to receive, download, because it just kind of showed me how deep this really goes and why it can be so intense for me to work through and with my abandonment wounds. So I share all of these experiences because for a long time I was living my life not knowing why I was carrying all this pain so heavily. And I didn't know or understand where it was coming from. And it wasn't until I had opportunities to explore and shine a light on these situations that it opened me up for the potential of healing. And for me to eventually learn how to send love to myself and nurture myself in the ways that I needed love, that I wasn't able to receive or that I wasn't given when I felt abandoned in my past. The other reason I mention this is because with the knowledge of my abandonment wounds being so intense, knowing that I carry this trauma with me, knowing that's a part of my story, in some way I feel like this long distance relationship was put into my life, honestly, to trigger and remind me of these traumas so that I have an opportunity to heal them. Something that I've been really mindful of within this long distance relationship is paying attention to whether I'm reacting to the present moment, the pain that my long distance relationship or challenges from my long distance relationship may be presenting me with, or if I'm getting overwhelmed and reacting to an accumulation and compilation of all of my abandonment wounds that my long distance relationship triggers. There's a difference. When I'm reacting to an accumulation or a compilation of all of my abandonment wounds, it's really overwhelming and I can't really do much with it, which is why it's been really important for me to learn how to do healing work around all of these experiences. Like I said, I've only scratched the surface. I think this is going to be a lifelong process, but doing this work has really made a huge difference in me being able to keep my sanity and healthily be in this relationship. A resource that's been really helpful and validating and that's provided me with a lot of vocabulary and knowledge about what's going on inside of me is a really popular book called The Body Keeps the Score. And in this book, they talk about the complexities of trauma and how it can leave a lasting impact on human beings. And so there are a few key points that I think are really relevant to this topic about my long distance relationship. And so I want to share them. And so the first thing is that in this book, they say that trauma isn't just an incident, but it's the lasting impact that an incident can create. Another thing is that we have a cluster of brain cells called the amygdala, and our amygdalas help us determine threats. And so if we are exposed to stimuli that is similar or related to a traumatic event that's happened in our life, our amygdalas will react in the same way and activate as if the traumatic event was happening for the first time or all over again. And finally, in The Body Keeps the Score, it says that parts of our brain are specifically wired to jump to conclusions whenever we see rough similarities in things or situations. And so, applying all of this knowledge and putting it in the context of how I'm reacting to my long distance relationship, given my abandonment wounds in my past, and makes a lot of sense why it can feel like the end of the world whenever my boyfriend hops on an airplane and says goodbye. At the same time, it gives me something to work with, and knowledge is power in this situation. And so it's given me an opportunity to understand what's going on with me, and then give me an opportunity, an opening to ask myself, okay, knowing that I can react like I'm being abandoned all over again as a little child, what do I need now in order to move forward and help myself move forward so that I can be okay. Something that's been really helpful for me in the moments when I do have to say goodbye to Callum, they're still really painful, and I take the time to allow myself, as you've already seen, to cry and feel my feelings and let them out. But something that's been really helpful that I've started implementing is I talk to my inner child, and I let her know that things are different now. I let her know that I'm an adult now, and that what I'm experiencing as an adult is different to the situation that she experienced as a child. I have so many more resources and my own resources that give me the ability to create the world that I want. And so I let her know, like, hey, I have money. I can buy a plane ticket and see him. Hey, I have a phone now and we can FaceTime Callum. I have resources that I didn't have when I was younger, that give me power. And when I let her know of this difference in power as an adult now, it kind of alleviates the feeling of helplessness that she felt before, because she can see me in that power and see me in my element and see that I have the potential to make my dreams come true, and the potential to eventually work towards creating a future with Callum where we can live together. On this last trip, I actually asked Callum to speak to my inner child as he held me. And so he let her know the same thing, like, this isn't permanent. We're going to see each other soon, and it's just going to take a little time, but we're going to be together. And that was really special for her to hear. I also have found it really fun to be able to show her that I get to also see my dad whenever I want to now, because I know that she had so much pain and trauma from saying goodbye to my dad. And so I actually just came back from a vacation from seeing my dad. And so I show her, like, hey, you can hop on a plane on your own now whenever you want and go see dad. It's different now. Like, as an adult, I have these different tools and resources that give me the ability to make things happen. And so being able to show her that, like, see how it worked out with my dad and I can see him whenever I want. Well, you can also see Callum whenever you want. And it might take a little time, but we're building towards something. And I just show her the path that we're headed. And that's been really helpful and healing and beautiful. So with all of this being said, it's still shitty when we have to say goodbye. And I don't think that that process will ever be, smooth, regardless of all the tools and things that I have to help myself. It's still uncomfortable. But one thing that I will say is that there is a silver lining in all of this, and that through this discomfort and the sadness of missing Callum, it's lighting a fire under my ass to continue to build towards this future where Callum and I don't have to say goodbye at an airport for months at a time ever again. Our discomforts can be really indicative to where our desires truly are. And so if we really listen to the signals from our discomfort and our desires, we can use them as motivation to help us create the futures that we want for ourselves. Something Callum and I like to do before we end every trip is to list everything that we're grateful for because of our long distance relationship, because we've really had such a unique experience being able to have this relationship and be from two separate countries. And I think it's been really helpful to kind of remember these blessings that are sometimes hidden, sometimes not hidden within this unique relationship.